Does the federal government hold too much power over the provinces?
No, I don't think so. I think there should be, perhaps a bit more oversight when it comes to things like healthcare. We can see with our provincial government that certain funds were transferred to them for the purposes of healthcare that weren't utilized for that. And we ended up with a $2 billion, was it surplus, or $2 billion more than they projected. And that could have been spent on healthcare. And there was a number of dollars that were transferred that weren't spent on healthcare.
I think in some cases, in other cases, not. I mean, I think there's always a strong case there's always a case for a strong federal government. But Canada is very diverse regionally, and I think that the provinces should be allowed to make some determinations, especially economic determinations that best suit their economy. Alberta, for an example, with the oil and gas situation. So, but that obviously ties into the federal government and getting oil out to our coast. So that can't be done without the support of the federal government either. So.
I'd say no, but again, that's like kind of from gut instinct more than anything else. But it seems like a lot of things could be better, definitely in how it goes about it. But I think it's less about power and more about like everyone finding something to agree on. So.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm someone who works for the city, so we have a lot of control with what we want to do, like locally, and that's not really dependent on federal, like with encampments, homelessness, with some of the environmental stuff locally. So I don't think. I mean, for funding, yes, we rely on federal funding. So if we wanted to do anything bigger, we would rely on the federal, but I don't think it's too much.
I saw what's happening in Alberta, and I believe that they do. The more. It's already hard. Like if you would call your MPP, you're barely going to get him to do anything. And what can he really do? So, the federal is even more so. If you call your MP, they're so out of touch with their constituents and what's actually going on the ground that they can't really do much. I focus more on municipal politics, and that's why this upcoming election in Ottawa I think is very important because, like I said, I'm into sports and recreation, skateboarding. So being able to first we have to change ourselves, it says. Then we have to try and change our family. Then we have to try and change the city that we live in. And then after all that, then we can try and change the country.
I feel like they're doing an okay job so far. I don't really have any feelings either way, whether it's too much or too little power. I think what they're doing, they're trying to do their best, and they're trying to help do their best for the rest of Canada and Canadians in general.
I think it should be like Switzerland, where the people decide what's going on. Twice a year, you have to fill out a form. There are about 50 questions. You have to say yes, no, or it doesn't matter. And if you don't send in the form, you pay a $20 penalty. But in Switzerland, it always is exceeded in what the people have desired and want. That's why they have a good country, and everybody seems to be happy there.
Yeah, I think they do. Canada's extremely diverse. You go to Atlantic Canada, it is a completely different world than it is in Quebec, which is completely different than it is in Ontario, which is completely different than the prairies, which, and of the prairies, Alberta is very different. And then British Columbia is vastly different. The North is different. So the more power that we can offer our provinces, the stronger I think Canada is going to be. We'll stay together. We shouldn't have a constitutional crisis or a threat of separation from a province. More power to the provinces, I think, makes a lot of sense. But it's got to be balanced. I mean, look at what's going on in the United States. That's a mess as a result of the states having too much power. So there has to be a balance, but I think more needs to go to the provinces.
No. Obviously, we're a federation. It's a balance. You can argue on a given issue one way or the other, but we're actually, when you take a look at the division of responsibilities and the amount of money spent, our provinces are actually very powerful. So I'm not worried about federal overreach.
Absolutely not. One of the ways that governments breathe is they centralize and they decentralize. But what you have to have is an overall perspective on what it means to be Canadian and focus on the values and the things that do unite us. And part of that is to have consistency across the provinces, where there's equality, where there's opportunity, where there's transfer of people, goods, services. No, and you need a regulator for that, and that is the federal government. We can vote them in, we can vote them out, but it's our choice.
No, I don't think they do.
Can you elaborate on that? Why is that?
Well, because Quebec is independent on what they do on their economy. Alberta tries to, but there's always different governments that go in there. British Columbia is doing fine. So the Maritimes always need help because of the job market they're in. Other than that, I think they're fine.
No, I don't think they do. No, I think the provinces do have a lot to say in themselves. Maybe in subsidies, of course, to the provinces. That yes, they have power over that. But do they have too much power? The provinces? No, I don't think so. Because we're one country, and we have voted to have a federal government. If we didn't have a federal government, then Alberta, Quebec, they could go do what they ever want to do.
They maybe do in terms of the amount of money they take from many provinces. Like if you think historically over the last 50 years, how much Alberta has put into equalization payments across the board, it's significantly more than most other provinces. And there's a lot of provinces who take a lot more out than they've ever put in. So I think that in terms of that kind of control, they have too much.
It's supposed to be a balance of power. So I'm going to go with the idea that over the decades and the century that more than a century Canada is, that the balance of power does even itself out from time to time. There are going to be tough times for both federal and provincial, and we've seen that. But I'm confident that the people who run for office, they want to do the best for Canada, not just special interests.